There we go.
All right. Oh goodness, there's I just want to hang on. This is
New.
no, I've never been the screen share person before. Okay, so I'm gonna get my PowerPoint up and then we'll start. Again, technology is not my thing. I'm sorry. Feet, I do know. And now I gotta go back and find Zoom. And now I'll share my screen. Okay, so you're just gonna see what I see here for a minute. And now I'm gonna go. So talk about choosing your footwear today. Just a little background. So my background is I got my Bachelor of Science, honors kinesiology for my education. And then one of my first jobs in the field out of school was actually working for an orthotics company doing custom orthotics and custom footwear and custom bracing, shockwave and laser therapy. So I spent about 3 years totally immersed in shoes, footwear, and people's feet. So I still enjoy getting to talk about it now. So I'll probably get off on about 15 different tangents here today. But I did put together a slideshow that will pop back and forth between so that it keeps me on track a little bit. So the things today that I'm going to touch on are how to tell what type of foot you have. There's 3 kind of basic foot types anatomically that people have, and then I'll touch on a couple of the common foot conditions that people see, and then the basics about footwear. And because we're into the summer now, I'm going to focus on more summer footwear. So today, running shoes and sandals are the 2 main things I'm going to touch on, but you can really carry that over into any other type of footwear. Maybe in the winter, we'll have another one of these where we'll talk about winter boots. So the first thing we're going to go into is the types of feet. So on the screen here, you'll see that the 3 types are a high arch, a normal arch, or a flat foot. So the one you hear the most of is people talking about being flat-footed or where their arch collapse. But basically, you can tell this by your footprint. Say if you got out of the pool or out of the bathtub and your footprint was on the floor, usually you would see one of these 3 different footprints. So a high arch, you would often see just a skinny line along the outside of the foot between the heel and the ball of the foot. A normal arch, you can see there, you'd have a little bit more, and then a flat foot, you generally wouldn't see very much of an arch at all. And that just means that that arch has collapsed down. And then beside those footprints, you can see the alignment. So a high arch foot person generally is more towards the outside of their feet. And you can see that the ankles and the lower legs, they follow that pattern as well. A normal arch is more neutral, so straight up and down. And then a flat-footed individual, they usually pronate, or they're in pronation. So where the insides of their feet come in, their ankles come towards the midline as well. And again, that's the one you see kind of the most of, you hear the most about, because it creates generally the most issues. And then we're going to get into this later, but overall, there's kind of the standard suggestion of shoe type based on your arch there: a cushioning shoe, a stability shoe, or a motion control shoe. That's just the very basic beginning of it, because overall, and I'll talk about this more, is its function is more important than just your alignment. So what your feet and legs do while you're walking and moving really will be the determining factor. And I had a nice little video here of what the foot does when it's walking, or what it's supposed to do. Oh, is it going to play? It wouldn't play earlier. Maybe it'll let me play it. It'd be fantastic if it does. Oh, wouldn't do this in the trial earlier. So while people talk about pronation or rolling in often being a bad thing that you're not supposed to. Okay, I'm back. I don't know what happened there. All right, let me go back to trying to share the screen. I honestly. All right, good. It's going to go right back to where we were. So what I was saying is, while people often talk about pronation being a bad thing, it's only a bad thing in excess, because every single person, every foot is supposed to pronate as we take a step. So you are supposed to roll in to a degree. It's just when you start to roll in too much that it becomes a problem. Another way you might hear it talked about is someone saying, my arches collapse. Again, that's just overpronation. You're rolling too far inwards. And shoes or insoles can play a big role in helping to prevent that and supporting the foot. The other thing you can also do is exercises to strengthen the muscles that support the arch of the foot and through the inside of the ankle. There we go. But like I said earlier, the most important thing is what your foot does when you're walking. So the biomechanics, so how our body works mechanically. And it's often these small little equipment glitches on the slide here, but just little things that your foot does too much of. So if you pronate just a little bit too much over time, that can lead to bigger or more painful problems. So I've come up with a couple of the most common things here that you see with the feet. So most people at some point in their life have a callus. So a callus forms because of a pressure point on the foot. A corn is the same thing. A callus forms on the weight-bearing surface, so the bottom of the foot. Most commonly, you'll see them under the ball of the foot, the big toe, or sometimes even on the heel. And again, it's just your body's response. It's building up thicker skin because it's taking too much pressure in that area. Corns, again, are in response to pressure. They're just on the non-weight bearing surface. So you'll see those on your toes, the top of the toes, maybe between the toes. And again, it's just you're getting too much pressure in that area and your body's responding. From there, bunions, this is something that drives me crazy, is a lot of people think bunions are a growth. They are not a growth. As you can see in the picture there, a bunion is actually a deviation of the big toe joint. So where it looks like you're getting a growth at that big toe joint, it's actually where the joint is buckling. And it's usually due to repetitive strain going on the inside of the big toe joint, pushing it out towards the other toes. And with that joint just starts to respond to that strain and bends, as you can see in the x-ray there. Where you get the pain is inflammation of the joint capsule, the soft tissue. So the ligaments, the bursa in there can get inflamed and be painful. Once it's gotten severe, some people do actually start to lay down new bone, but that's not where the bunion started. The bunion started due to the mechanical strain of the way you're walking, and things happen from there. Bunion surgery is one of the ways people treat it. I always, in the past, have told people to try and treat it more conservatively first by changing your footwear, getting orthotics, because bunion surgery is very invasive and can actually end to that with that joint being fused. So you don't have flexibility, and it can make walking a little bit more challenging. So bunions can be treated. Even though that deviation may not go away, you can get rid of the pain by getting rid of the inflammation and the strain. So again, bunions are not a growth. And then the other main one that people hear a lot of, or they get a lot, is plantar fasciitis. Sometimes you also hear people referring to it as heel spurs. So we have a band of tissue that runs along the bottom of our foot called the plantar fascia. You can see it in the diagram there. It starts at the heel bone and it fans out towards the ball of your feet and goes into the toes there. Where your pain comes in is often due to overpronation or those arches collapsing. Too much strain is put on that band of tissue and you start to get small tears in the fiber. And those tears can be painful. The most common area is right in the heel, but it can be felt at anywhere along that band of tissue. We often hear people say, oh, in the morning when I first get out of bed, that's the absolute worst. And that's often because the tissue has started to heal overnight while you're sleeping in that shortened position. And then as soon as you stand up in the morning, your feet are going to flatten out a little bit. You might do that overpronation we were talking about. That puts that strain back on that tissue. And all those little tears that may have started to heal overnight, they're all tearing again at the same time. And that's where you'll get that pain. And after a couple steps, it starts to feel a little bit better. One thing people will say is that my bone spurs are hurting. I have pain in my heel because of bone spurs. That's not necessarily true. The bone spurs are usually there in response to the strain from the plantar fascia. So that plantar fascia is being strained and it's pulling on the bone, and you actually get little tiny tears in the lining of the bone where that tissue attaches. And in response, the bone lays down new bone and it actually forms that spur that grows out. However, if you stop the tearing of the tissue, then you won't actually feel the pain anymore. You can have big old bone spurs underneath your heel and not feel pain as long as you're not getting the tissue tearing away from it. So if we correct the cause of the tearing, we can actually have you be pain-free with bone spurs if that's the case. So those are just some of the most common issues that come. And I threw in here too, again, we're going back to the function. The foot bone's connected to the leg bone. So how our foot is aligned and how our foot moves can affect us all the way up even into our low back. So every single step we take, every minute, all day long, our legs are lined up on top of our feet, our hips on top of that, and it all responds to how the foot moves. So I'm actually going to, in just a minute, I'm going to come out of the screen share, but I'm just going to talk about a couple issues that can actually be caused by your feet. So problems in your feet can cause pain such as shin splints, Achilles tendonitis, so pain at the back of the heel, the back of the ankle. It can increase the incidence of arthritis in the knees and the hips. Can cause patellofemoral syndrome, IT band syndrome, bursitis, and hip and low back pain. I'm just going to stop my screen share here for a second, just so I can demonstrate quickly here. I'm going to move my computer down onto the ground. So I put on shorts specifically for this reason. I don't usually wear shorts to work, or these shorts at least. But if you can see my feet, so if I take a step, you notice that my shin bone here is right over top of my feet. If my foot rolls inwards, my shin bone is actually going to follow and it's going to rotate inwards as well. Now my kneecap attaches right to the front of my shin bone. So if my foot rolls in and my shin bone rotates inwards, that point where my kneecap attaches now also moves in. So my kneecap, which goes through this track, is now getting pulled towards the inside. The muscles up through my upper leg are going to try and counteract that, but generally the thigh bone is going to follow. It's going to rotate inwards as well. So that's just a very quick example of how the bones stacking on top of each other move in response to the one below it. In person, I'd be able to do a better explanation of that, but it's hard over computer. I'm going back to sharing my screen here. Going back to the PowerPoint. And now we're going to get on to the footwear part. So why is footwear important? Actually serves a couple different purposes. So we'll kind of start from the outside in. So the most obvious is it protects our feet from the environment. So walking on hard, uneven surfaces, step on a stone, you definitely want a sole between your foot and the ground. It helps us to navigate our environment safely. So it helps us with traction, whether it's on a slippery surface, whether it's on uneven, rough terrain, and you need that treading, like say you're out hiking, something like that. Provides shock absorbency and cushioning. This particularly comes into play for those high arch people, because your foot, if you have a very high arch, is usually more rigid, doesn't have the same built-in shock absorbency that a normal arch or a flat-footed person has. A shoe is also going to help aid in propulsion, so propelling us forward. So with that heel to toe motion, some shoes actually have a built-in rocker to move us more smoothly from the heel to the toe. It provides stability under the foot with the footbed. So that's the part of the shoe that's directly underneath our foot. It's where we think of arch support. That's from the footbed. And then the upper part of the shoe provides stability of the upper foot onto the footbed underneath it. So another way you could think of it is that upper shoe really helps your foot from rolling or sliding off of the surface underneath. What makes up a shoe? Now, I've used a running shoe here as an example. This was a picture I found online. I do have the website I can give you, so I can't take credit for this. So a good supportive running shoe has some different parts to it, and you can see on the diagram. I'm going to break it down though. So the outsole, so that's that very thin piece along the bottom of the shoe. It's the part that comes into contact with the ground. This is what provides us with the traction. And based on the material, it can serve different purposes. So in the winter, you generally want a little bit of a softer material with bigger lugs to really grip onto the ice and the surface underneath it. If you're using it for more active activity, you want a more responsive material, something that you're not necessarily going to trip and catch your foot on the ground. So it really depends on the time of the year and the activity that you're doing. Then we move up one level to the midsole. So that's that whole layer of foam, or sometimes varying types of foam, between that thin layer on the bottom and the upper shoe. So this is where you get a lot of the support from the shoe. Depending on what the shoe is being used for, whether it's a neutral shoe, a motion control or stability shoe, it can be varying different materials. It can have one type of foam, it could have 2 or 3. Sometimes there's even plastic or gel in that layer, depending on what you're looking for, and I will go over that a little bit later. Then from there, we move up to the heel counter. So right at the back, that part actually kind of wraps around the back of your heel. And the more supportive a shoe is supposed to be, generally the firmer that heel counter will be. You do want generally a nice strong one here so that it will hold your foot in place on top of the shoe. And I'll get into the foot type with that in a couple of minutes. And then the tongue and the laces or the Velcro, that's going to help to secure your foot on top of the footbed or into the shoe. The upper, which is kind of the part that goes over the top of your foot, again, that helps to secure your foot in, and there's varying different types of material used for this. You really want something that's breathable, but that's not going to stretch out too much. And then we get into the insole. So that's what's actually inside of the shoe. Some shoes have an insole built right into them that you can't remove. For the most part, when you get into running shoes, that insole can come out. The ones that come with the shoes usually just provide a little bit of cushion and maybe have a teeny tiny arch support. But that's where you can get into your over-the-shelf insoles or orthotics, or the custom orthotics, which can run upwards of $500 if you get into the custom ones. So if you are going to go to custom orthotics, I always suggest getting the orthotics first. And then once you have the orthotics, that's when you go purchase your shoe, because you really want to make sure that that $500 insole is going to fit into the shoe that usually costs a lot less money than that insole does. So the next couple slides, this just includes all that information that I just talked about, but I wanted to keep that diagram up while I was going over that. So you'll have this to refer back to if you want to. Now, here's your 3 different types of shoes that were mentioned at the start of the slideshow there with your 3 different types of feet. So the one on the left, so number 1 here, that is your motion control shoe, which overall is more recommended for a flat foot. This number 2, that is your neutral foot with a stability shoe. And then on the right, number 3, that is your high arch foot with a neutral shoe. So I know neutral feet don't go with neutral shoes. I know, I'm sorry, it's a little confusing there. So we can get into, I have lists here that you can refer back to afterwards, but I want to get into actually talking about the shoes. So I'm going to bring us off of the screen share, and I'm actually going to bring some shoes up here to talk about and show you. So I mostly have stability shoes, so it's what I can really kind of talk about. So if we're looking at this running shoe here, this one is considered a stability shoe. It's the Hoka Marahi, I think. But when you're looking at it, and I know it's hard to see because the coloring is so similar. If we look at the midsole right here, there's 2 different types of foam. So there's the white foam, which runs here. It actually loops around. This is their fancy term is a J-frame, that doesn't matter. And then there's the light blue foam, which is up the top here. So this white foam is actually more dense and more rigid than the light blue foam. So that more dense foam being towards the inside part of my shoe. So I'm sorry, it's a little dirty because these are the ones I use for running right now. That's where it runs. That's going to provide extra support where it's located. Whereas the light blue foam, that is more cushioned. So on this shoe, there's extra support along the inside and then a little bit along the outside of the rear foot there, which is going to give support and help prevent my foot from rolling in. If we look at the insole that comes with this shoe, it's very thin, has a little bit of an arch support there and a little bit of what we call a heel cup, how it rounds up around the outside there. That heel cup is going to help to stabilize that rear foot and also increase the surface area of the foot to spread out where the pressure is. Now, if I wanted to add extra support to the shoe, I could go to an insert. I have 2 different examples here. I don't have any, couldn't find my old custom orthotics, I'm sorry. So a more flexible insert like this one would provide more cushion. It does have a little bit of a firmer, stiffer arch right through the middle here that would give added support. And I would just take out the insole that comes with the shoe and I would put this insole in place. From there, if that wasn't enough, I could go up to this insole, which is actually, it's you can customize it yourself. It's a moldable one. You put it in the oven, you warm it up, and then you shape it to your foot. But as you can see, it's got a higher arch here, and it's got an even deeper heel cup, and it doesn't really bend as well as the other one. So it's more rigid in terms of support. And again, with this one, I would do the, self-heating molding thing, and then I would just put it inside my shoe and it would give me that added support. Then another shoe that's done a little bit differently. So these were my old road running shoes. And these again are considered a stability shoe. And if you look at the inside of this midsole, instead of one that runs the entire length, this has, it's actually a little bit of a hard plastic right underneath the arch. So that's going to provide extra support right underneath the arch, whereas the white foam you see at the front and runs through the heel, that's softer, that's going to provide the cushioning. So this is just a different way of providing support. and structure and stability to the shoe. You look at the heel counter, these guys, I can't really squeeze it and collapse it. It's pretty strong. It's really going to hold my foot on top of the shoe. And the insert on this one is very similar. This is a flexible one. It's got that little bit of an arch support, but it's very soft, so it's really not going to do a lot. And that heel counter is going to help to stabilize my foot. I do have a custom insert here that's not mine. So this is what a custom orthotic can look like. This is an old one. So it's actually got a good demonstration in terms of pressure points. This is Chuck's. So you can see he has a lot of pressure right underneath his toes and his big toe. And then right underneath the big toe joint, right there, he's worn basically down to nothing. So on your old shoes, you can take a look and you can often see where your pressure points are. But if you look underneath, the actual module of the insert usually only goes to just below or behind the ball of the foot, because that's where you need the control. It has the arch support there, and his has a heel cup, which is going to help control the rear foot. And you would just, again, put this inside of your shoe. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing, and those two running shoes that I just showed you, I'm going to go over what the ad for that shoe is so that you can see how they advertise this stuff. Just got to go back. Okay, so oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to go here. Here's the ones I want. Oh no. Okay, it's not letting me open what I want to open here. So this is for the purple shoe that I showed you actually second. So my older shoe there. How they explain this, it's the overview is it says it's got lightweight power run cushioning, provides a luxurious plush feel, and then it calls it a TPU guidance framework in tandem with the structure. So the TPU guidance frame, like they come up with these funny explanations, that would be that underneath the foot there that I was talking about. If we go to, that's not the one. Okay, the other one disappeared. But here's an example of a motion control shoe. This is a good example of motion control. So this is a New Balance shoe. I'm in no way promoting any specific type of shoe. These were just examples that I found that showed what I wanted to show. So you can see with this shoe here, there's that gray spot. They actually have a roll bar is what it's called. And if we bring up this image here, you can see from the underneath that roll bar runs the full length underneath the rear foot there. And then that blue line actually shows where that shoe is trying to guide your motion. So it's trying to actually guide you along that blue path, which is that pronation, hit at the heel, roll in a little bit, and then come across the ball of the foot. So a motion control shoe does exactly that. It tries to control your motion. It's a shoe that is going to be more supportive than a stability shoe, probably have a little less cushioning though, because the materials used in it are meant more for structure and stability than cushion. There we go, that's the inside. And then you can see that roll bar there on the inside. So usually looking for a different color or a different material, that's going to indicate that there's extra stability and structure in that shoe. So overall, what do you look for in that shoe is you're going to think of your body, your foot, your legs, your low back, and what do you need? Do you need a lot of cushion? Do you need support from the midsole? So that's where you look into that motion control, the stability shoe or the neutral shoe. looking at the shoe, do you need stability from the heel counter and the upper? So you're going to look at the material that the top part of the shoe is made of, the material and the structure of the heel counter that wraps around the back of the foot. And then also thinking of the insole. Is the insole that comes with the shoe enough, or do you need a little extra with an over-the-counter or a custom insert to go into your shoe? And from there, you also think of what you need the shoe for. Do you need traction for outdoor hiking? Are you using it for walking on the roads? Will you be on wet surfaces? That kind of thing. I already went through those kind of ad examples that I could find. So we're going to go beyond that. But these are some samples you could always look at later if you wanted to come to this. And then I also wanted to talk about sandals. So I'm going to come out of the stop share here. And I have a couple different styles of sandals to talk about. First one, I'm going to go kind of with ones that can be customized. So we have a shoe like this. So this is a Naot, but there are other brands that do the same thing. So when you get this sandal, it comes with a footbed like this. But if you're someone who needs a custom orthotic or a custom insert, the good thing about these sandals is that the insert that comes with them comes right out of the shoe, and you can put your custom orthotic or insert into that shoe. But this is what this footbed looks like when it's new. These sandals have been around for a long time, and you can see this hasn't been worn hardly at all. That's because this is not the one that's worn in it. We have the custom footbed that goes in this one. You can see the module of the custom orthotic that goes under the rear foot. There's a heel cup that helps support and hold that heel in place, the arch support, and you just slide it right in. This one, as you can see, it's thicker, so it's actually built to be a footbed in this sandal. You don't have to have the footbed. You can just put your orthotic in with a little bit of cushion underneath, or you'll just have that little bit of extra depth on top. A lot of people do that when I was doing the inserts, and that works fine, but you would want a full length orthotic to go in it. So if you need a custom orthotic or custom insert, a sandal like this is going to be your best bet, because you can take that footbed out and put the custom one that you have in it. From there, if you don't need that custom footbed, you can go down to something you still want support. So this isn't the best Birkenstock version to show you, but it has a heel cup in there, so it's going to help stabilize. It has the Birkenstock shaped footbed, so it does have that built-in arch support. And the one thing that the Birkenstocks also have is they have support underneath the transverse arch as well. So right at the ball of the foot, which goes across just behind the ball of the foot and supports the long bones. So if you're someone who gets a lot of calluses or pain under the ball of the foot, something that has a little bit of lift right behind it is going to help alleviate some of that strain. So Birkenstock insoles are really good for that. They also do have orthotics that you can buy over the counter, and you can put them in your shoe. Again, not trying to get you to go out and buy anything. It's just something that some people have had a lot of success with before. In terms of the Birkenstocks, there's different levels of support with them as well, beyond just the footbed. So this single strap would probably be one of the least supportive, because you only have the strap that goes over the toes. Your toes are really going to have to dig in and grip to hold on to the shoe, putting some extra strain. So from there, you can go up. They do have a 2-strap version, which is going to be a little bit more supportive because you have the 2 straps holding your foot in. But I would always recommend going to that extra strap that goes around your heel, because that's going to help secure the sandal onto your foot a little bit better. You're not going to have to grip on with the toes, and you won't have to worry about your foot sliding around so much, which can potentially be a trip hazard or a fall hazard. So that's something to think of when you're choosing your sandals, is whether your foot will stay in place on top of the shoe. The good supportive one, you can go down a level from that. This is the sandal I like to wear right now. It's a Hoka recovery slide. It doesn't have quite as much arch support, but what it does have is a lot of cushion underneath, and it has that rocker motion that I mentioned before for propulsion, sorry. So you can see how it rounds up at the toe. So as I'm walking, once I get to this rocker point, it's actually just going to encourage my foot to rock forward and take a little bit of strain off in that sense. You'll notice some running shoes have very much the same thing. Go back to this running shoe, the one I'm currently using. It has that rocker at the ball of the foot as well, so it's going to give some propulsion. Walking shoes, often you'll see that. And if that's something that you like, then it's a good thing to have. Some people prefer more of a flat sole. They don't like that rock, and that's a personal choice. Or we can go to other skins. I have a whole thing of shoes out right now. So I've seen Jody wear these ones before, ones similar to this. So this is a sandal that's very closed in. If you're going to be outdoors moving around a lot in the summer, this is something you can look into because it has all these straps. It's going to help hold your foot in place. It does have something that wraps right around the heel. It's got some toe protection, but it still has a little bit of breathability. And the sole does have some arch support built into it there. Doesn't have a whole lot of cushion in it, but it's not too bad. And then some of the worst sandals to have for the summer in terms of support, cushion, safety, you name it, is the good old fashioned flip-flop. They're very easy to put on, very cool in terms of temperature. But as you can see, this sucker here has no arch support. It's got a little bit of foam. My toes are having to do all the work when I'm wearing it to grip on and hold my foot in. So while it's nice and easy, if you have any kind of foot, leg, back issues, it's not the ideal shoe to wear. And then one more thing to touch on here is a shoe that they kind of market themselves as being better, and they can be in some ways. In others, a shoe like this, a sandal like this, it's really even less safe because it's got a higher sole is a little bit thicker, straps just go over, but it's much more narrow and it doesn't have any kind of built-in little cup there. So while it looks similar to this guy in terms of the style, they both have straps that go over the toes. They're both a little wider, it seems. This guy here, he has that nice little heel cup sunk in that's going to help hold my foot in place a little bit better than something where my foot would just be sitting on top. Okay. Sorry, it just jumped out. So with this, it's very easy for my foot to slide off the side. It'd be very easy for me to roll my ankle to come out of place. So while this one is wonderfully cushioned and feels good under your foot, in terms of an actual functional purpose, it's not going to be the safest if you're thinking of balance and falls prevention and functional. You want something where your foot's going to sit a little bit more inside and you have less risk of it sliding out. Now, let me double check my list and see if there's anything that I've forgotten that I wanted to go over here today. Okay, that's all I had on my list. Now, if anyone has any questions in terms of shoes, I know that was a lot of information thrown at you pretty quickly there, so I can answer any questions or let you